Hey, small business owners. Have your sales gone up but your bank account doesn't? Has getting to know your numbers been on your to-do list for a while? Let's face it, you're good at doing the work in your business, but the money is hard. Have you noticed that by the time you pay your bills and pay everyone else each month, there's just not that much left for you? It's just not fair. As a business owner, you know you deserve to be getting paid more than you are, but you just can't seem to figure out where all the money went. What if there was another way? What if there was a way to tell your money where to go instead of wondering where it went? What if you had money in your bank accounts at the end of the month to show for all your hard work? Well, this is the sign you've been looking for, that you're not alone and help is just a call away. The team at Likes Accounting prides themselves on being financial translators that can help you find smarter ways to make money, save money, and finally start paying yourself a salary that you deserve. Working with Likes Accounting not only helps you know your numbers, but they're cheerleaders helping you build a more profitable lifestyle business. The team at Likes Accounting are just a bunch of numbers nerds. They're all self-employed experts with experience in your industry. Megan, the owner, is not only fun, easy to understand, and crazy smart, she's even a CPA. Tech to CEO listeners get a free review of their QuickBooks online when they mention this podcast and visit likesaccounting.com. Again, get a free review of your financial data when you visit likesaccounting.com and the Tech to CEO podcast.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to this rendition of Technician to CEO. I'm your host, Wesley Maria. I'm service leader with Bergflow. And today I'm very privileged to have Erik Svanholm. Am I saying that correct?
That's great.
Erik Svanholm. He's with LightEdison. They're a multi-million-dollar renewable energy company. They operate across the state, across the nation. They do solar and lighting, correct?
That is right.
All right, perfect. So, Erik, I know that you don't hold CEO title at LightEdison, but maybe just give us a quick rundown who you are, where you came from, and what makes you interested in the CEO journey.
Yeah, thank you for having me. First of all, Wesley, it's great to be with you. I think this topic of what it's like to become and be a CEO is a fascinating topic. My journey has certainly been non-linear in nature. I started my career as an applications engineer in building systems and lighting systems, and from there, I discovered pretty quickly upon entering the workplace that there were so many aspects of running a business that I was completely clueless about. I was very strong technically, and I knew my job very well. But then there were these strange, terms around accounting and finance and production and inventory. And I realized that all of those pieces really have to come together in a very synchronized way to have a running business. And after a few years of being confused and befuddled by all of these things going on around me in the business world, I decided I'd had enough, and I went to business school to learn about all these things and understand them better. And that was an eye-opening experience. And that really led me to realize my interest and aspirations and talents in a broader array of business activities than just being the technical expert. And from there, I joined a finance-oriented company because I had now acquired deep financial acumen and skills. And eventually, I made my way to a small technology company. Then as the COO, the Chief Operating Officer, where a friend of mine had been the typical founder CEO and was at that time. So he himself was a PhD in engineering, had invented some very cool and powerful software in the world of controlling energy systems and was building a company around that. And at the time that I joined the company, it had just become big enough where he had realized that he could no longer personally be the chief salesperson, the chief operating person, the chief marketing person, and the chief technical person. So he said, how about you, Erik, come in and deal with all the things that you're really good at, which is the people and the money and the legal. And I'll keep doing what I'm really good at, which is the technology part. And I said, this sounds great. 4 years later, that startup company was acquired by a large manufacturing company out of Chicago called S&C Electric Company. And that's when I took the helm as CEO of that technology company, as a wholly owned subsidiary of our new parent. And so I suppose you could say that I was CEO with an asterisk. I was CEO of my division. It was still a separate company with a separate financial statement. But we had one investor, and that was our parent company.
Okay.
And after a couple of years in that role, which we can talk more about, the company that I ran was absorbed fully into the parent company, and I became a vice president of the bigger company. I left there about a year ago and joined LightEdison as its vice president of operations. And so now I'm back in a smaller company. We're about 50, 60 people. And I work very closely with the CEO at LightEdison and am really enjoying that role. So that's my arc in a few minutes. And that's how I kind of went, at least for now, through the fire as a CEO, and am now happily operating as the second in command to the CEO here at LightEdison.
So let's talk about LightEdison a little bit. What was the attractor for you to step into renewable energy as a business? Because that's primarily what you guys do. And I know you guys have a very strong mission statement and a really big vision for the company. What for you was the attractor to say, hey, I want to get my hands dirty on an industry that I don't understand?
Well, the industry I had been essentially facing since I joined that technology company back in 2012 as its COO. We were developing software that managed energy generation systems, power generation systems, including a lot of renewables. And so a lot of the work that we did all the way back then was really about how to combine generators with solar and batteries and a variety of technologies. And certainly a key driver there was to support more renewable energy in the world and get ourselves off of fossil fuels. And so I've been in that space for quite some time and really appreciate that the work I get up and do every day has that very positive end state for my community, the planet, the country, and that's a very gratifying thing. And so that is certainly an important element for me at LightEdison. Like you said, our goal with this company is to go big in the world of building sustainable energy, clean energy systems, whether that means going to highly energy efficient LED systems for factories and office buildings and other facilities, or whether it's building solar power to replace fossil on rooftops and carports and in open fields for utilities. So that sustainability industry element is certainly important for me. Additionally, the culture at LightEdison really aligns well with my personal value system. And of course, that is a fundamental tenet of a successful relationship with any team member at any organization, right? We need that cultural alignment. And some of those elements at LightEdison are honesty and transparency and involving the whole team, seeing and acknowledging all of our team members and all of their efforts, producing very high quality work at a fair price. All simple things when you say them, but actually living them and executing them across a rapidly growing organization is a non-trivial endeavor. And LightEdison does that really well. And so that attracted me as well. That's the kind of thing I want to be a part of. So, and lastly, LightEdison is at an inflection point in their growth cycle where they're going from an engineering and contractor-centric construction company platform to a much larger and broader scope and view and scale. The company needs processes, systems, structures, and a much more elaborate organization of team members to execute at the scale that we want to execute, and being a part of creating that growth and that new stage for the company, and really hopefully being a catalyst to getting the company to the next level. That was a very intriguing challenge for me.
Man, I made some notes and I can unpack an hour just on what you just shared. So I'm going to try and keep it short. One is I'll start at the end. I think something that you said was key in the success of leadership. So CEO and leadership, all inclusive, is a marriage of strengths. LightEdison is good at certain things, and then your business schooling, your education, your experience, all that type of stuff, it's the marriage of that strength and your ability to go into an environment. I mean, you said LightEdison is an inflection point, perfect opportunity to level up the talent in your business. I think a lot of people they try and bring in talent to force the inflection point, but anytime, whether it's COVID, market, whatever it is, there's always inflection points in every business. And for me, the sign of a true CEO is somebody that can identify that open door and say, you know what, now's the time to bring in the next level of talent, not to cater for what we have today, but to build what we're going to have tomorrow.
I think that's right. I think, in the hard part often, as the CEO, is being able to see around corners in time and seeing clearly when that inflection point is going to arrive and what it's going to look like. In LightEdison's case, the company had a very clear long-range vision of what it wants to achieve, and has been methodically pursuing that for the better part of 8 years now. And growth was arriving on track, and because the growth of the need for the work that we do in building clean energy systems was growing so fast, the company did good work and positioned itself to capture that growth rate. But not just Mike, the CEO, but the whole leadership team, like you said, realized that the tools and experiences and activities that got you to where you are now is not necessarily the same set of people and skills and experiences that can take you to the next level. And so they saw clearly that they needed to bring in expertise in the areas of controlling, overseeing things like accounting and systems and processes, and scaling systems so that we could grow another 200%, 100% a year for the foreseeable future. And so whether or not that constitutes a leveling up by LightEdison and hiring me, it's a work in progress. It's not for me to ascertain, at least not yet. I'm less than a year in, but I do feel like I've made a positive contribution, and we're on our way.
Good, man. Good on. And we spoke about this offline a little bit just before we started. Is you get founder CEOs, and then you kind of get people who buy themselves into this position. So you've kind of organically grown and were given an opportunity to step into that space in the past, with the previous company. I know there was a day when you kind of moved into the big office and got the fancy parking and, somebody that brings the coffee to your desk. When did you realize I am now CEO? When did it dawn on you to say, okay, now I've got to start acting like CEO?
In my case, I had some time to prepare for that transition. And so, as I mentioned, when I was hired as COO, it was clear and explicit from day one that eventually the plan was that I would succeed and become CEO. And so that's helpful, right? Because now you can operate in your current role, in my case as a COO, with an eye toward the next step. And in that company as well, I worked very closely with the CEO. It was really a right-hand man kind of situation. So I saw and experienced and really experienced all of the ups and downs of being a CEO from kind of right next door, so to speak. And so when the task fell to me and that baton was handed off, it was a natural next step. It was not a big leap. And again, that was a small company. And so my span of control as COO was already pretty large. And so morphing from that to the CEO role wasn't that big a leap for me. And it certainly wasn't a surprise. And I was very comfortable in the role because I'd been so close to the founder. And I should mention too that the founder didn't exit the picture completely. He stayed as the CTO of the company, and we basically maintained the same operating relationship. It was just whose title is on which business card, and so from a day-to-day operational perspective, it wasn't a radical change for me.
And I think that the thing that in your story that sticks out for me, Erik, is you said, hey, I kind of came in as CEO and I kind of knew this CEO baton was going to get handover, and there's development that needs to take place. And I think when you look at a service-based company, whether it's yours, $1 million, $10 million, $100 million, it's all the same. Some people arrive at that point where, okay, today I'm CEO, and then they realize, oh crap, I haven't prepared for this race. Where, by your story, you kind of saw, as you say, the CEO kind of looked around the corner a little bit and realized, hey, I need to build some runway in front of my COO. I think a lot of business owners inevitably end up in the CEO's seat until they're there. And we were joking about it earlier. It's not, it's not a black turtleneck on a stage with the launch of the new iPhone experience. That's the easy part. That's the client-facing side. It's the hard stuff behind the scenes. So what made you take on this journey to say, I'm willing to invest to get to that CEO mindset, that to be the guy?
Yeah, for me, it was really the discovery over time that I both had a skill set and a talent set that lent itself to leadership. In that I could quickly understand a wide variety of business functions and problems and challenges, and see how they all connected to run a seamless machine as a whole. And it turns out that's really hard for most people. You can have someone who's an outstanding accountant or an outstanding engineer or an outstanding salesperson, and you try to get them to understand the functions of one of the other departments, and it's just Greek to them. And that's just how they're wired. And it has no bearing on how good they are in what they're good at. But there are some people like me who really have a wide array of interests and can understand the fundamentals of a lot of those different business functions and how they're connected. And so that lent itself to me taking on increasingly generalist roles, where the job was more and more about coordinating multiple teams, multiple departments, multiple functions, and seeing how the whole fit together. And so, and I enjoyed that. And the reason I enjoy it is that, from my perspective, the leader's job is essentially to remove roadblocks from everybody else around you. Sometimes the question comes up, how do you motivate your people? And I always wave that question away. And I say, if you've got to spend any amount of time motivating your people, you've got a mismatch between your people and the company's mission. You have to have people who are excited and motivated about what they are doing and what the company is doing. And once you have that, now your job changes to just being, how do I prevent that person from being demotivated by not being able to execute the things that they're really good at and show up every day to do? And so I guess sometimes that's called, being a servant leader. I really felt as though my job was really to just unlock potential and clear roadblocks and dispel confusion and strife either within a department, across departments, between the company and partners, customers, the market, and not so much, be the heroic leader that drives everything, but be the catalyst that allows everybody around the company to do their thing. So it was really a journey of discovery that I had these skills and talents. B, that I enjoyed deploying those skills and talents. And C, the last part was the people around me all agree, it seems, that I have these skills and talents, and they seem to appreciate me having that role such that they can do their thing. And so now all those things came together, and that was really the primary growth opportunity for me as the COO of this technology company, was really just growing my awareness, my confidence in deploying these skills and talents, to the point where when I made the transition to CEO, I felt very comfortable taking in different points of view and then making the decision, and then trusting that the people around me would recognize that they'd been seen and heard, and a decision had been made, and now that's what we're going to go do. So that was really my path to realizing that being a CEO was for me.
Yeah, as you're talking, I'm thinking of a lot of CEOs that I've spoken to, and they try and, they don't have that 50,000-foot view. They don't have that holistic view of where they're going. They're so stuck in the weeds, and their only solution is, I'll just chew my way through the detail of the weeds until it becomes clear on the other side.
Yep.
And I see this little turtle, and there's this massive football pitch, and they think, well, I just need to eat this little bit, and then it's going to be clear. And then the detail will always be there. And one of the things I think that you said is really important is, one, is your ability to remove roadblocks. And two is when you become a CEO, you kind of move into people management. Now, you went to business school. You learned how all the details of the business work. But there's an element of you as a CEO, and you said it, is a leader. People can elect you as a leader, but a leader requires to lead. You are required to lead the people, because that's why they look at you. Not, hey, I want this, you guys need to go and do this, I'm going to go play golf. Is you need to lead that people, whether they are inspired, whether they're frustrated. You need to go ahead of them and take some of those roadblocks out the way. And I think sometimes when we get to that ultimate pinnacle of business called CEO, I am the CEO of my company, we're going to think, well, I'm just going to move some papers around on my desk, and it's easy going from there.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are companies here and there where that is, in fact, the life of the CEO. Pretty sure there aren't that many of them, though. Running a business and operating a business is just hard, and it's getting harder. Competition is fierce in every direction. The world seems to be growing more unpredictable in every dimension. And so having a leader, a CEO who not only can see through all the chaos that may be apparent on all sides, but also who can stake out and articulate the course for the company and the rationale for the course in a way that the team buys in and executes in that direction. And then, being the referee internally that makes sure that whatever combination of activities your departments and teams are working on, in fact, is pushing in that direction. And being the tiebreaker when, the sales department disagrees with the engineering department about which way to go. Somebody has to make that call, and that's the CEO's job, and you can't really escape that. I personally feel that successful CEOs need to embody and hold the company's vision and the direction. I have encountered some CEOs that basically take the attitude of my group heads or my division heads they decide among themselves where they think their part of the company should go. And then my job is basically just to, referee and align and make sure that we're not in conflict. But as far as I can tell, the opportunity there for turf battles and diverging goals and politics that get in the way of moving forward grows pretty fast. And so I think having the CEO be the holder of the vision and the vector is pretty critical to success. And I think that's definitely true for smaller companies that are really trying to find their way and find their footing as a company and grow in a stable way. Yeah,
I think a lot of leaders, and you describe both of them. You get those that lead with a team, and the other ones that say, "Hey, when you guys, I'll just referee." Is when you get into that refereeing space, you're allowing for personal objectives, personal opinions, all that type of stuff, and then people deal with it. And it's like, well, why is my business so full of, office politics? And, for me, whether we want to admit it or not, it's a lack of leadership. There's a void in your business is calling for a strong leader, and your absence is causing, what's that movie with the boys on the island? When I think of the name, Lord of the Flies. It creates this Lord of the Flies environment at your office, and all of a sudden self-elected leaders start saying, well, I want this and I want to be called this and I want to do this. And then, people are in business for 10 years, but they still live the startup mentality every year. Well, we just need to make enough every year, and the business never grows.
That's right. And I think, if you do a good job in your recruiting, your head of growth should be a strong-minded person. Your head of services should be a strong-minded person, right? They should have, experience and skill in and opinions about what is best for the company based on their vantage points. And so if you do well at that level, but then kind of stand back, you can easily get into these squabbles where, my idea is better than your idea. Yeah. And so I do think that in most cases, and especially in smaller businesses, that the CEO necessarily can't just be the referee, but has to be the articulator of the path forward, and being very clear about what the expectations are for the different groups or departments.
Switching gears a little bit, Erik, we've spoken a lot about what it's like being a CEO within a company. What's it like being the guy? And my question to you is, how important is a peer-to-peer network? How important is it for you to be able to have a conversation with another CEO and say, you know what? I suck at being a CEO. I struggle with this. And I think a lot of people live in isolation as a CEO, and they don't establish a network. So what's your perspective around that?
Yeah, I think that's an important point. And, I come at this with a bit of, looking in the rearview mirror, that at the time that I held that role, I did not have a robust peer network of leaders in that same role. And it probably would have benefited me to have had that for these exact reasons that you describe. I did have a lot of good counsel and guidance, both inside the organization where I was, but also at the parent company. The interface between me as the CEO of the subsidiary and the mothership, if you will, was a board that included the CEO of the parent company. And so, he ran a company that was 2 orders of magnitude or 3 bigger than ours, but still took the time to provide me guidance and commentary and assistance. And so, right there, that was very helpful in just living in that role. I will say that one thing that I think is often underestimated or misunderstood is how lonely the position of CEO is. Especially if you rise into the role from the ranks, so to speak. You think of yourself as just one of the team, as just one of the guys, just one of the girls, what the case may be. and you expect people to interact with you on that basis. But the fact that you basically hold whether or not they have a job tomorrow in your hands changes that relationship, whether you like it or not. And recognizing that, acknowledging that, and realizing that people are not going to tell you the things that they would have told you if you work in their department. They may not have your best interests in their choice of activities or priorities. Even if it's clear to you what they should be doing, it may not be clear to them. And that was one thing that I underestimated and didn't really realize the depth of that I had to get used to in the role. And you have to navigate around that. You have to find sources of information. You have to find some back channels down into the organization, different places where you have that individual trust with someone who trusts your open communication and candor. Plus, of course, you have to build an organization where everyone understands that it's okay to tell the CEO bad news. And a lot of places don't have that, and then there's, shock at the top when something adverse happens because they don't have that culture. And so I try to work really hard to make it very obvious to everyone that it was completely fine to tell me things that they knew and I knew that I didn't want to hear, but I needed to hear. And to me, that's the only way that you can run a business effectively, by having as much information as possible at your fingertips. But just assuming that your team is going to hand it all to you in a candid way when your business card says CEO, that does not happen.
Yeah, I think a lot of, there's this invisible threshold between us and them. And the moment you take, even if you come through the ranks, when you go into them mode, it's like, oh, the CEO made these decisions.
Yes.
He forgot what it's like being on the track. He forgot what it's like being in the field. So, it's easy for him to stroke a pen over a piece of paper and say, we're changing direction of the company. And I think it's key being able to retain that open door policy, the communication. What advice would you give people to change their perspective around being a CEO or becoming a CEO?
Well, certainly, as you've mentioned, if you can build a relationship network of people who are in that role, aspire to be in that role, or have been in that role, a lot of useful guidance and wisdom can be gathered that way. And also, of course, just educating yourself constantly about and observing what's happening in the world and around you in the community. Reading can be useful in just learning about, and memoirs or other things, right? It's kind of secondhand how CEOs have seen and experienced things. But I think also it's useful to talk to people about their experience with their CEO, wherever they happen to be. So whether you're talking to a buddy at a bar, just ask about his relationship with the leader of their company or her. And just gathering as much intelligence as possible about and perspectives about what works and what doesn't work. Typically we as human beings tend to learn a lot more when things go wrong than when things go right. And so there's a lot to be learned by observing other CEOs mess things up, whether you're close to it or not. There's a lot of learnings there about what not to do or what can happen if you choose certain courses of action. So I think staying observant, asking questions, asking about and with and of as many CEOs as you can is really helpful. And I think in many cases you'll find that at least among smaller companies, CEOs are very busy, yes, but if you're sincerely interested in their life in that role, chances are they'll take some time and share that with you and answer your questions and educate you, because it is an education to live through it.
Yeah, I think that's where people, when they get into that CEO space, they forget to ask. Just ask somebody, what's it like? Is it everything it's meant to be? Are you doing everything correct? Where are you doing? What are you doing around getting the guys to show up on time? What are you doing around motivating the people? What are you doing around changing your commission structure? Whatever it is in your business. It's about that continual renewing of your mind. And CEOs, they are willing to tell you where they've struggled. Even, we've been in an environment where competitors actually started talking to one another and say, hey, what are you doing? Let's both start doing this, because we're actually professionalizing the experience of the industry in our area. Having said that, let's put you on the soapbox. So what has been your greatest success to date?
Yeah, greatest success. Can answer that in a number of different ways. The first one I'm going to answer, which may be obvious or non-obvious, was successfully proposing to my wife.
Mm-hmm.
And that was years and years ago, long before I ever entertained the idea of becoming a CEO. But the reason I bring that up is that, having a strong life partner personally, as a fuel and foundation and safety valve for all of the pressures of being a CEO, it's just enormously helpful to have that rock with you, and knowing that you have them there. In my case, my wife is extremely smart and observant, and isn't at all afraid to call me out when I say something foolish. And again, there's a lane of communication that's extremely valuable, right?
Yeah.
And so I mentioned this mainly for the aspiring CEOs out there to not discount the business value of your life partner being there for you and being able to support you. There are some practical elements to it. My wife worked full time and still works full time, but she was able to work while I went to business school. And also, if you're growing a small business or expanding a small business that may be in a financially precarious position, right? Having someone at home to bring in a more stable, predictable paycheck can give you the courage and the stamina to ride through the turbulence at work until you get to a more stable state. So definitely for any CEO, I think it's very important to not forget the importance of a strong family life and home life, and a particular focus on your spouse or your partner. So that was a win for me. That was a very important fundamental factor, I think, in my success on an ongoing basis, including as CEO. More close to the topic at hand, though, I think I count my biggest success so far was shepherding that small technology company through its acquisition by the bigger parent company. That wasn't something that I did alone, of course. The founder CEO was also the sole owner. So, of course, he was the quarterback of agreeing to sell the company and structuring the terms, and executing the deal. I don't want to diminish that. But as you might imagine, when you're trying to expedite a company sale on a fairly fast timeline with, on the surface, widely differing profiles. We were a swashbuckling crew of 25 or so software engineers and surrounding personnel, based primarily in and around Boulder, Colorado, with a commensurate kind of personality profile and culture, being acquired by a 100-year-old manufacturing company out of Chicago.
Wow.
Navigating the process of bringing those two organizations together carried a lot of finesse and nuance. It was also, of course, an emotional experience for this founder to transfer his baby, his creation, his successful company, to a different organization and no longer be at the helm of that organization. And so it fell to me to continue to stay the course and keep the line clear and make sure that we made steady progress toward succeeding with that sale. And round trip from first contact to execution was, I think it was just under 200 days, which is pretty fast for that kind of process. And it required me to really, use all the skills in the toolbox. There's the technical financial analysis wrangling about what are we paying for what, and what's the right price for things. There was a lot of communication with the team at the company where I was, because anytime you have a change that big, there is a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt among the crew, and ensuring that they felt secure and had clear visibility into what was going to happen was really critical in keeping the whole team together, and landing the ship, if you will. And that was successful. 2 years after that acquisition, only 2 people had left voluntarily. And so that's an extraordinarily successful merger of a small tech business into a large manufacturing business, in my book. And many of the people are still there. Most of the people are still there at the parent company. So I think that was from a business perspective, that was the most challenging exercise, and the one that I think I did the best with.
Erik, thanks for that. I'm always amazed when I ask, strong leaders and achievers that question. They always start with a personal element. Most of these interviews that I do with business owners or CEOs, they all attribute their success to, I have a good spouse. I have somebody that keeps me in check. Sometimes the CEO title can go to our head, and my wife has often told me, it's like, I don't work for you, you know that. And I'm like, well, do you want to? Because it'll just be easier if I tell you what to do. But I think therein lies the key for me is, with your spouse, fear-based decisions are removed, because somebody actually tells you, hey, that's a fear-based decision. Oh, you're changing the company, or you're chasing that deal, or you're trying to acquire that business because you're worried about keeping the lights on at the end of the month. And having that spouse as that cheerleader and that person that can keep you in check, I think a lot of people overlook that. And then the other thing that I picked up what you were talking about is, your greatest success wasn't I did this. Your greatest success was I was part of this. I managed this from here to here. And I think for me, that's the sign of a CEO, is saying, you know what, I was part of my success, is part of somebody else's bigger success. And the CEOs out there, it's like, I did this, I bought this, my revenue is this, my net worth is this. I feel, going to what the Bible says about it, is there's a splinter in someone else's eye, and there's this whole 2x4 in their eye. And they tend to look past their own shortcomings because they're constantly looking for the problem elsewhere. And somebody that has a perspective around, you know what, I'm not the person to find the splinter in your eye. I'm the person that's accountable to saying, you know what, I don't want to be the bottleneck. The co-CEO or founder of the company that you worked with, he stepped out and realized, you know what, I need somebody of a higher skill. I need somebody that can manage this transition through this acquisition.
Yeah, and in that scenario, he had his role in spearheading the negotiations and the dialogue and all of those things. And my role was really to ensure that all the nuts and bolts were properly tightened and in the right spots. And to the extent that became necessary, would keep that founder focused and steady and pragmatic around the process. Transactions like that never go exactly the way you intend at the outset. There are always wrinkles and curveballs. And you're right, it really was, and I really do think about this in the context of contributing to the outcome for the team and the company. That's really the measure. Again, I just try to play my part to the best of my ability, and we had so many people contribute to that successful effort. But it was clear that in pulling all the threads together and being the person that kind of from a pragmatic level made sure that everything got from A to Z, that some good work was done there, given that it had a successful outcome. And with regard to you mentioned how our spouses or life partners kind of see through us and have good guidance for us. That's the great element, is that my wife perhaps doesn't understand the ins and outs of the business I'm in, but she understands me, and she
Yeah.
understands how I'm likely to start approaching problems and opportunities, and what I'm likely to miss, or at least ideas about what possibly could get missed. She'll say things like, what you're describing here, sounds like you're looking at it from this and this, and you may not be focusing on this and that. Have you asked those questions or talked to those people? And she doesn't know whether I've done that, and she doesn't know whether there's anything there, but she has suggestions and can see avenues and opportunities for me to make better decisions in my role, not because she knows the business, but because she knows me. And so that is something unique, I think, to the life partner role. And doesn't have to be your spouse. It could be a really close friend, someone who knows you in and out, your thought processes, your fears, your aspirations, and isn't afraid to tell you negative things or to critique you. So someone on your team, one or more people on your team in your personal life that fills that role, I think is it's not perhaps necessary, essential, but it sure helps a whole bunch.
It's a very polite way of putting it. Yeah, I used to be in the insurance industry, and one of the things they taught us there is, when you build a business, and this is the advice I have for CEOs, is be confident about your business, but never ever be arrogant. Because I don't care how good you are, I don't care how in demand your business is. You guys are renewable energy. Everybody's going there. There's a big hype, right up to a president level. So you can find your industry and the fingerprint of your industry everywhere in society. But there's a difference between being confident about your business and arrogant. And, if brothers can fail, if Greece's country can fail, surely your company can fail. So for me, what I'm bringing this to is, have a level of humility as a CEO to say, what, I don't know everything. You know what, I can't see everything. I have to be open to my wife telling me to look in a different avenue, my accountability partner, the people on my team. That's why a peer-to-peer network and surrounding yourself with people that can call you on your shit and say, what, you need to drop the ego, because this business is not succeeding because of you. It has to succeed despite you. And I see a lot of CEOs, unfortunately, fall victim, and they get themselves in a bind because the ego starts taking over. And then you start losing culture. You start losing people in your company. You start losing the value proposition that you sold in the first place to the people on the team. Quick question, Erik. When as a CEO, or now CEO of a much larger company, from what you were the CEO of, where do you go when you're stuck? How do you become unstuck as a CEO?
Yeah, I think first, as you just touched on, recognizing that you're stuck is pretty important, right?
Yeah.
As they say, the first step is acknowledging you have a problem.
Yeah.
And so once you get there, I try to ask a lot of questions of people I think could have different perspectives on the situation, and sincerely seek their take. Questions like, if you were me, what would you do, or what would you consider doing, is really helpful. And as you mentioned, making sure that people are comfortable sharing their ideas with you, even though you are perhaps the CEO or a senior executive or something. Showing them that you want to hear their idea, and if it's a good idea, not only will you use the idea, but you will let everyone know whose idea it was.
Yeah.
It's all of these are pretty important features if you want these things to happen on a recurring basis. And so those are some elements that I've used to get unstuck. Also trying to just take yourself out of the day-to-day busyness. Find a quiet spot, go for a walk, just get yourself in a different environment. As I think many leaders realize, their best ideas arrive not when they're sitting in their chair at the office. It could be, the proverbial shower, or when you're out walking the dog, or something like that, when your brain gets to work in an unfettered way and arrives at conclusions that you'd never get to between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. So I think those are the things that I've mostly that I turn to when I realize that I don't see a clear way forward.
Yeah, I was listening to a sermon the other day by a pastor of our church, and he explained it beautifully. And he's busy writing a book. Anyway, part of this entire conversation is we have this identity around who we are. I am CEO. Then we say, what is the situation? I have to make a decision. And then we combine those and say, well, I as CEO should make this type of decision in this environment. So the environment necessarily doesn't change. So that's business is business. Bills need to get paid. People need to show up. Clients need to be happy. The attack or the battle that people have is around the identity of CEO. Because am I typical CEO, or am I CEO of this environment? And then, well, I aspire to be CEO like Erik was. So I'm going to take his playbook and run it in my game, and then the outcome's completely different. So the outcome is determined not by the environment that you find yourself in, but by the identity that you assume. And I think that for me is where the battle of the CEO is identifying the identity associated with that. Who am I now that I am CEO? Who am I supposed to be? How, not responding how people expect me to show up, but I kind of got here because I either worked for it, or it was part of my development journey, or I run my own company and I don't want to be a technician anymore, whatever it is. That identity for me is what the important element is. The environment will always change. If this changes, you have to have one constant, which is your identity. And I think that's where the work of a CEO sits, is constantly renewing of the mind. Whether it is reading, peer-to-peer conversations, going to your wife to get unstuck, whatever it is, that's the hard journey, is establishing what my identity as a CEO should be.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think the most important elements of that are, what are the inescapable responsibilities you hold as a CEO that you have to respect and wield in a positive way? If ever you just want to run away and hide and not make the unpleasant decision, well, guess what? You're the person that has the job of making the unpleasant decision, and you just have to acknowledge that and know that. But you're right. All of that has to be accounted for in the context of who you are as a person, your personal values and your roles and your outlook on life. You have to layer in, what does CEO-ness mean for me in my authentic presence? And we see a wide variety of personality types as successful CEOs of a wide variety of companies. There's no such thing as the successful CEO personality. And I think you're exactly right that you need to live in that role, as in any professional role, in a way that's authentic to you, while recognizing that top role comes with influence and power and responsibilities that you have, whether you like it or not. You have it whether you prefer to run away or not. And you need to just understand that if the decision is something that you have to make, then you've got to make it. That's probably one of the biggest areas of transformation for anyone that's stepping into the role, for whom it wasn't the obvious destination from the start. Some people just say, I always know best in this space, and therefore I'm the obvious candidate to be the CEO, and I'm starting the company, and I'm running this company that I created. Then you may not have that mismatch or that discomfort. You might have some of those arrogance issues, but nevertheless, the happy blending of CEO identity, persona, responsibilities with who you are otherwise is a pretty important factor in leading successfully.
Yeah, Erik, I will have to cut it. Yeah, I will carry on and take up your entire day. Erik, thank you very, very much for your wisdom and your insights and sharing your personal story. Just a little bit about LightEdison. If people want to get hold of you guys, if they want to see what you guys do, where can they get hold of you guys?
Yeah, so our website is lightedison.com. So LIGHT and the last name of the inventor.com. You can find a lot of information about us there. I'm sure you'll make my information available, Wesley, where people consume this podcast. And I certainly want to be a positive contributor to the community of senior leaders and CEOs. And so I will certainly endeavor to make myself available to any listeners of this transmission that finds my commentary and perspective interesting or potentially useful. It's been great to be working with you, Wesley, and Dirk at Bergflow in helping me and my whole team get better at everything we try to do. And like I said at the top, I think it's a fascinating topic to just think about what it means to be a senior leader and a CEO. And so, if anyone's interested in LightEdison or renewable energy or executive life or my particular path, I'm happy to share it.
Erik, thank you very much. It's always my pleasure to spend time with you. I always feel like I learn something. Have a great time with your family, and thanks for spending time. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Wesley. It's been fun. Take care.
Have a good time. Ciao.